My name is Glenda Mathis, and I am the Chief Executive Officer here for the YWCA, which basically means I get to do everything. For a long time, the YWCA has had many different kinds of programs, and we were very interested at the board level of being focused on our mission. And so before doing that and before evaluating all kinds of programs, what we wanted to do is just know, well, what is the status of women in Lubbock County? This stemmed from a report that the Institute for Women's Policy Research does for every single state and regional areas. They are based out of Washington, D.C., and they have a report on anything you want to know about the status of women. They can pretty much tell you. So that's why we commissioned them to give us the level of credibility and the resources that they have access to that we wouldn't have had access to in order to outline some of the key issues in Lubbock. Once we decided that we wanted to have a very clear perspective on the status of women in Lubbock County, the clear choice for us was to contract with the Institute for Women's Policy Research out of Washington, D.C. They are well known. They have reports on every single state and regional area, and they have access to resources that we wouldn't have had locally. So we were very pleased to contract with them because it offered credibility when we brought the report back that said these are the issues that are most important for the women in Lubbock. You know, I'm not a statistical researcher, but I will tell you that within the report we were very pleased. They outlined all of the resources they used. They outlined their methodology. They spent a lot of time with us asking, well, what is it that you really want to know? And we wanted to concentrate the study on 5 key areas. One was educational opportunities, but also educational attainment. We wanted to know about access to jobs, access to health care. Were there any gender wage gaps that we needed to look at? And then finally, what kind of participation were we seeing from women in the political process? Because you hear all the time that there's not enough women in political office. Well, are women voting? That kind of thing. Or do they know about that process? So that was the 5th area that we wanted to look at. I don't think there was anything startling in the report. I think we were expecting most of the answers that we got, but there were a few surprises that you didn't expect that the numbers would fall the way they did. A good example of that is I don't think I would have predicted that our educational attainment in for our young women of color would be as low as it is. Only 10% of Hispanic girls will go on beyond high school if they finish high school, and only 12% of our African American girls will achieve more than high school. So the question then becomes, well, what are we doing? I mean, what do we need to be doing? That was really the whole purpose, was to find out, well, how can we make a difference in that? So our focus then certainly turns to that. How can we create dreams and visions for those girls so that we can have higher educational attainment? I think another surprising fact was that women need to have higher educational credentials if they're going to get the same level of job that a man might have. That's not the same level of pay, but just the same level of job. So there were some surprising statistics in that regard that I think just help us clarify and focus where our attention needs to be. Once we had the report and began to evaluate it, certainly it puts a different focus within all of our child care programs in terms of trying to expose all of the kids to more fields that they may find interesting, having a higher percentage of programming that relates to STEM, really focusing on careers and giving kids the opportunity to start thinking of themselves in a different way. That's been certainly one of the areas of focus. Now, we also then used that as a tool when we started designing our new facility on University. We started looking at, well, what does the community need? And one of the clear areas that pops up is the need for access to health care, easy access to health care. So we'll have a clinic in that facility, the access to training, the opportunity to exercise and take care of yourself while there is a place for child care, the access to educational opportunities while there is child care available. Those kinds of things make sense. We all know that they're needed, but when you see the numbers and you begin to realize it's not only needed, it's critical in order to have success in those kinds of workforce development programming. We're very excited about the new facility because it is a focus on being able to support the findings that we had in this report. It's a focus on giving people access to training, access to high-quality child care, access to health care, access to resources that they need in order to move forward. A problem is rarely isolated. As soon as you get one problem, all of a sudden you find out that there's a lot more. I'll give you an example. You have a young mother who comes in and we have a breast cancer awareness, and we have access to navigating through the healthcare system if you are diagnosed with breast cancer. So a young mother comes in, she's got 2 or 3 children, she's been diagnosed with, and she may be a single mom. How is she going to go through that treatment and get her children taken care of? And then how do you keep the lights on? How do you get through all of that? So you're absolutely right. None of these problems actually happen in isolation. They quickly compound. A catastrophic illness can take a family down just as fast as anything you can imagine. We only do a certain portion of the problem. We pride ourselves in being able to say we don't do that, but we do know someone who does. And it is such a rewarding community to live in, because none of the agencies in this community could do their work if it weren't for the fact that we all collaborate together and we know who does what the best and who can help families in need. Because as you pointed out, the problem is that none of these issues come in isolation, but you don't know exactly what people are going to be dealing with. You don't know if they need childcare or if they need utility assistance, or if they just need somebody to help them through the mental health issues that may come along with the depression or the anxiety that comes when you're dealing with catastrophic events. So collaboration is key, and I think Lubbock is very fortunate to have agencies that understand that and are more focused on the individuals and the circumstances they're dealing with and trying to help. You know, I think one of the things you realize about Lubbock is that there are a lot of services available. The key is making it clear to families that those services are there. And I really want to emphasize that this report didn't totally focus on poverty. It really looks at the fact that no matter where you are on the economic spectrum, there are times when you need assistance. There are times when you need resources. There are times when you're in the middle of the most exciting period of your life, like, for example, you're forming your own new business and you need some resources to help you. So I think the report really was focused on finding where gaps might be, or figuring out where we can put resources together to sustain people's efforts. For example, maybe I want to take care of my health, but I'm a single mom, I don't have any place for the kids to go, so I need a place that will offer me a place where the kids can be happy, they can be learning something, and I can work out without guilt, or I can take care of my health without any guilt. So I think that if there are gaps, it's more about making resources more accessible. The help is there. It's just people don't know about it, and they don't know how to get past all the hurdles that it may take to take advantage of those resources. I think that's one of the key things that I took away from the report, is that a person who will drop out of high school probably drops out, I'm not sure, but I assume, drops out because they haven't yet established a vision for their life, that they can be more, that education may be a really good resource for them. So I think that if you talk about one of the major gaps that I see is that we focus on giving kids a sense that they can achieve anything. Now, we say that a lot, but we don't have the resources available for them to experience that and to know, yeah, I absolutely can achieve anything that I set my mind to. And that even if money is a problem, there's somebody that's going to help me navigate those waters to prepare myself to achieve my goals. And I think we need to be more focused on that grit and that resilience that kids need. I think that's what our job at the YWCA certainly is. It's one of the things that we want to focus on. Because when you establish, there is no reason that kids should be dropping out of school. None. Except you find in your study, there were lots of really good reasons. No support at home, maybe, or catastrophic issues at home where they need to drop out, or maybe there's teenage pregnancy, or all kinds of things, but they don't know yet how to overcome some of those barriers and still stay true to their own goals. And that's what we need to do a better job on, is explaining that and not allowing people to give up. The generational aspects of poverty are real, and when you look at that, it can sometimes seem overwhelming, and I'm certain that a lot of times people don't really realize how someone could not even have an idea that they can pop out of that culture, that poverty culture. But if you're in the midst of that, and you begin to see that if no one ever told you that you could be something else, that life could be different, if you had no earthly idea that you could make your own money, why would you? A good example is Lemonade Day. People look at Lemonade Day and they think, that's such a cute activity. Those little girls out there with their bows and those little boys selling the way they do, that's such a cute thing for kids to do. And they'll buy lemonade just because they're thinking it's a cute thing. However, what they don't see is behind the scenes. What happens when you have taught a child that what they did gave them money, that they actually had control over their own money? And that's a powerful lesson. The first time you work and you get paid for what you did, that's amazing. So, I think Lemonade Day, even though it looks cute and it's a fun activity here in town, it really does expose some of the major issues that we have. Creating a dream, creating the fact that you can achieve your dream, and that you're in control of your own success. That happens out of a simple little activity. Now, does that solve all the problems? No, it doesn't. And does it give the child who didn't have the support at home to do a lemonade stand? No, it doesn't. But I think when we realize that we have to overcome some of these things, knowing that it's ongoing. They don't necessarily have the support to believe in themselves. And anything you can do to keep that fire burning, I think is critical. And it takes a lot of people along the way. So now you're an adult and you're in the midst of that poverty. What's going to cause you to fight the battles that it takes to jump out of it? Because there's a lot of people who want to pull you back down. A lot of people want to keep you where you are. And that's a big problem for anyone who's trying to do better than their predecessors. It's hard to overcome that. And you need really strong friends and counselors and supporters to guide you through that. Well, certainly the report is something that the YWCA commissioned, and so a lot of people may not really take that, own that it's a problem that we all have to work on. I think people recognize it. I think it's been interesting. It was no more a surprise to the business community that these things exist than it was to us. I mean, everyone knows, we've got a problem going on. And it doesn't matter whether you're in Lubbock or you're in any community in the world, you're going to see these kinds of things surface. I think when a person decides that they're going to make a difference, it might actually happen more on an individual basis. So for example, I hand this to a business owner. He reads it, he thinks about it, but then a few days later, an incident will come up and they go, oh, that is what I read in that study, and I will need to do something about it. You see that all the time, and a news story will come out and you think that's another part of the world, and then all of a sudden you are faced with an issue in your own world and you go, oh, it clicks, I need to do something about this. So it happens very quietly, and truthfully, it happens one person at a time. These are big issues. They're not things that you can go out and put an eraser to, if only we could. They are issues that we have to work on, and they're best handled really one person at a time. The issues that come out in this report are difficult topics to talk about. And I guess if there was anything that will come out of the report and from our point of view, it would be that more opportunities to talk about it and to really look at issues. The idea of race relations is just anathema to anybody. You don't want to offend anyone. You want to be nice. You want to be understanding, etc. But here's a real business reason. In 2050, the percentage of women of color will be 53.7% nationwide. So you look at that number and you think, well, what's the purpose of that? Well, if you look at this, when you look at women of color, and if they are not able to achieve their educational objectives, if they are more likely to be in poverty, if they're more likely to have health issues and lack of access to health care, if that's the case, and that's more than 50% of your population, we can't have that as a nation. We have to stop it now. We have to give people access to resiliency and the opportunity to take care of these issues. Now, 2050 may seem like a long time from now, but I want to tell you, children born today, children born this very day, will be 31 in 2050. So if a child is born today, when they're at the prime point of starting their lives, they'll be dealing with this issue unless we've made a real concentrated shift to focus on getting people educated, making sure that they have a dream, making sure that they know that there are resources available. There's a lot of resources out there that go unused or go used inappropriately. You'll hear those kinds of stories. But if we stop and just focus on the ones that really want help and that really need some assistance getting out of the grip of that poverty, we can make a difference. I feel very confident we can make a difference. And it just takes concentrating on it step by step. I'm not sure about that. I think it depends on the group you're in as to whether or not you're willing to talk about some of these issues more. I think we're seeing more women get involved in politics, and I think that's important. I think anytime you have a balance of any demographic group you can split, whether it's gender, race, age, ability, if you have a balance, you're going to get a better result. And so I do believe that the more we start talking about these issues, the more we'll find that balance. When you're not talking about it, you're not getting a balance. I will say one thing, and that is that when you ask about the difficulty of starting a conversation and then put that in next to this report, Well, this report is just a basic way to start a conversation, really. And I think that when we first commissioned it, we didn't really realize that that's what might happen, but it does open the door for people to start looking at it like it's not just our people of poverty that are in trouble. It's across the board that we've got some issues that need to be resolved. We need to have more active participation in the political process as a country. We need to have better equity in terms of pay scales. And what it shows is that women may be better, you have more women educated with higher degrees and that sort of thing, but they're not getting equal pay. Well, we need to talk about that. Why is that? And some of the myths that surround that may or may not be true. And until you actually start the conversation, you don't really know. So this book just becomes a conversation starter. We're very grateful for the support we received from the CH Foundation to commission this study, because as I said, even though it didn't totally surprise you, it really does surprise you that we have these issues that we really don't get to talk about on a very deep and meaningful level. One of the key things that this report points out is that something we all know, but women will tend to be in service occupations. They'll tend to be in the occupations that may be minimum wage occupations, like, for example, housekeeping and the retail stores and things of that nature. So they're more likely to have jobs that are at the beginning of the pay scale. There's lots of reasons for that. But when you have that kind of a gap, and then you see that women are more likely to be the single head of household, if there is just a single head of household, and you recognize that 42.1% of those women are in poverty, that becomes a big number that we need to start looking at. Well, that's why we focus on that education. Well, why is it that women are only involved, or mostly, I should say, why is it that women are mostly involved in those service occupations? Are there really not women who are interested in technical fields or building trades? You'll find that back in World War II, when all the men were away at war, women filled those jobs. Maybe they can fill them now, but maybe they haven't had that possibility exposed to them. And so, it just really helps you focus, like, well, maybe there's some things that you could do that would be give you a livable wage and use your particular skills. And you don't have to go to college necessarily, but you may be able. I know a lot of women that are much better at using a power tool than I would ever be, but they may not realize that that kind of a career would give them a livable wage. So there could be some very simple solutions on an individual basis that you can use to help people bridge that gap of poverty. If you go back and look at the films of World War II, women were driving cranes. They were, and it's kind of funny, old newsreels, they were doing lots of, they were riveting, they were, you see Rosie the Riveter often, but I was actually surprised, like, but they had to have them, but they were preparing, they were running the factories because the men were at war. So they were building the machine shells and all of that, and you can find that. Women can do anything that men can do if they're motivated, if they want to. And men can do anything that women can do if they want to. It's just a matter of telling that individual, what is it you want to do? And then let's figure out how to do that. The world needs dreams. That's what I think. And kids don't, if they don't have the dream of being in the NBA or NFL or a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, they often don't have a dream. And that's what we need to work on.